The sun was beginning its slow descent behind the rolling hills of the Midwest, painting the sky in shades of gold and pink. Jake Thompson wiped the sweat from his brow as he finished mending the fence along the edge of his ranch. Life on the ranch was hard, but honest, and Jake liked it that way. He had grown up here, knowing every inch of the land, every horse, and every tree. He enjoyed the simple rhythm of life, waking with the sun, feeding the animals, and working the fields. It was a life he could trust, a life that made sense. As he tightened the last post, Jake noticed movement at the edge of the neighbor's property. Tom Harris, the man who lived a few miles down the dusty road, was frantically gathering his things. Jake frowned. He and Tom were not close, but he had seen him enough over the years to know that Tom was rarely in such a rush. What caught Jake's attention even more was the woman standing by Tom's truck. She looked small and uncertain, clutching a suitcase tightly to her chest. Her dark hair fell in loose waves around her face, and her eyes, wide with fear, darted nervously as if she were unsure where to turn. Jake's curiosity got the better of him. He had a sense that something was wrong. The sun had dipped a little lower when he decided to walk over and see if he could help. As he approached, he saw Tom Harris slam the truck door shut. There was no greeting, no explanation, just a cold, hurried goodbye. Before Jake could ask anything, Tom started driving away down the dirt road, kicking up dust behind him. The woman stayed where she was, trembling slightly. Jake slowed his steps and called out gently, "Hey there. You okay?" The woman looked up at him, her eyes filled with a mix of fear and relief. I don't know what to do," she said softly, her voice trembling. Jake noticed the suitcase at her feet and the small bundle of belongings she held. "You're welcome to come with me," he said without hesitation. "You don't have to stay out here alone." She hesitated, looking at the road where Tom had disappeared, then back at Jake. Something in his calm tone seemed trustworthy. Slowly, she nodded. "Thank you," she whispered. Jake led her across the short stretch of land to his farmhouse. It was modest but warm, with smoke curling from the chimney and the smell of fresh bread still lingering from the morning. "I'm Jake," he said as he opened the door. "What's your name?" "Elena," she replied, her voice barely above a whisper. "Well, Elena, you're safe here," Jake said. "Come on in." The house was simple. A small kitchen with a wooden table, a living area with a worn but comfortable couch, and a few chairs. Elena's eyes widened slightly at the sight. She had never imagined such a place. Far from the city, streets, and chaos she had known before leaving home. The simplicity of it was comforting in its own way. Jake offered her a chair and made her some tea. As she sipped quietly, Jake watched her. He noticed the tension in her shoulders, the way she kept her hands tightly wrapped around the cup. He didn't want to rush her. She had been abandoned, and that kind of pain could not be fixed with words alone. "I guess I should explain," Elena began cautiously. I came here to marry someone. A man I didn't know very well. He brought me here, and then he left. He didn't care. I didn't know what to do." Her voice broke slightly, and she looked down at her cup. Jake felt a pang of sympathy. He had never understood the idea of mail-order brides. It seemed strange and unfair to treat someone like property, as if their life was just a transaction. "You don't have to talk about it if you're not ready," he said gently. "You're safe here, and I'll help you however I can." Elena nodded, grateful but still unsure. For the rest of the afternoon, Jake showed her around the ranch. He introduced her to the horses, explaining how to feed them and groom them. Elena watched closely, trying to remember everything. She had never been around animals so large and strong, and the responsibility both scared and fascinated her. As they worked, Jake talked quietly, sharing small stories about his life on the ranch. He spoke about the seasons, the crops, and the animals, painting a picture of a life built on patience and care. Elena listened, slowly letting her guard down. There was something comforting about his steady voice and calm presence. When the sun began to set, Jake prepared a simple dinner: roasted chicken, potatoes, and fresh vegetables from his garden. They ate together at the small wooden table. Elena had never known a meal like this: simple, warm, and made with care. It was different from the hurried, impersonal meals she had been used to. After dinner, they moved to the living room. Elena sat quietly on the couch, hands folded in her lap. Jake sat across from her, giving her space, but remaining present. They talked about small things: what she liked to eat, her favorite seasons, what she missed from home. It was slow, gentle conversation, but it helped Elena feel like more than just someone abandoned. Days passed, and Elena settled into a routine. She helped with chores, learned to care for the animals, and even tried her hand at cooking. Jake was patient, never rushing her, always ready to guide her when she needed help. Slowly, the fear and uncertainty that had gripped her began to ease. She began to see that not everyone was cruel or selfish. Some people were kind, honest, and willing to help without expecting anything in return. One evening, as they were finishing up chores, Elena hesitated near the barn door. "Jake," she said softly, "why are you helping me? You barely know me." Jake paused, leaning against the wooden post. "Because it's the right thing to do," he said simply. "Everyone deserves kindness, especially someone in your situation. I couldn't just leave you out there." Elena looked at him, her eyes glistening with gratitude. "Thank you," she whispered. Jake nodded, not wanting to say more. Words could sometimes feel empty, but actions, they meant everything. And his actions had shown Elena that she was not alone, that someone cared about her well-being. That night, as Elena lay in the guest room, she thought about her life. She had traveled far from her home, hoping for a new beginning, only to be abandoned. Yet, here she was, in a small farmhouse, cared for by a man she barely knew but trusted. The fear and loneliness were still there, but so was a tiny spark of hope, a feeling she hadn't experienced in a long time. For Jake, life continued much the same. He woke with the sun, fed the animals, and worked the land. But now, there was a quiet presence in his house that brought a new warmth to his days. He found himself looking for Elena's smile, listening to her laughter, and feeling a strange, comforting sense of responsibility and care. Neither of them could predict what the future held. There were still challenges to face: adjusting to a new life, dealing with the past, and learning to trust again. But for now, they had each other, and that was enough. Slowly, in the quiet moments of everyday life, a bond was forming. A bond built on kindness, patience, and mutual respect. Thanks for watching, and seeing you, and mutual respect. And so, under the vast, open sky of the Midwest, in a small farmhouse surrounded by rolling fields and grazing animals, two lives began to intertwine. One was marked by hardship and uncertainty, the other by steadfastness and quiet strength. Together, they were beginning a new chapter, one filled with hope, trust, and the promise of something more than either had expected. The sun disappeared behind the horizon, leaving the sky painted with the soft glow of twilight. Inside the farmhouse, the light from the fireplace flickered across the room, illuminating two faces, one worn with life's struggles, the other steady with care. It was a beginning, fragile but real, and for the first time in a long while, Elena allowed herself to imagine a life where she was safe, valued, and maybe, just maybe, happy. Days turned into weeks, and life on the ranch settled into a steady rhythm. Elena had grown more comfortable with her new surroundings. She could feed the horses without trembling, collect eggs from the hens, and even help with the milking. Jake noticed the change in her, not just in skill, but in confidence. She smiled more freely now, and her laughter began to fill the farmhouse, lightening the heavy air that had once followed her. Jake, too, felt the difference. He had always enjoyed his quiet, predictable life, but now the house felt warmer, fuller, and somehow alive in a new way. He found himself watching Elena as she worked, admiring the careful way she handled the animals and the determination in her eyes when learning a new task. There was a gentle pride in seeing her grow, and he realized he had come to care for her in ways he hadn't expected. One crisp morning, Jake decided to take Elena to the nearby river. It was a short ride on horseback, and the water glistened under the early sunlight. Birds sang from the trees along the bank, and a gentle breeze rustled the leaves. Elena looked around with wide eyes, taking in the beauty she had never noticed before. "It's peaceful here," she said softly. Jake nodded. "It's my favorite spot. You can think, breathe, just be yourself." Elena smiled, and for a moment, the weight of the past seemed to lift. She felt a strange sense of freedom. Freedom from fear, from uncertainty, from the harsh world she had left behind. She turned to Jake. "Thank you for everything, for helping me, for trusting me." Jake shrugged, a small smile tugging at his lips. "I didn't do it for thanks. I just couldn't leave you alone." He paused, searching her eyes. "You deserve better than that man who left you." Elena looked down, her hands twisting nervously in her lap. "I know. I never imagined it would be like this. But I feel safe with you. I don't know why, but I do." Jake's heart skipped a beat. He had expected gratitude, maybe a shy smile, but hearing her speak like this, with honesty and vulnerability, made something stir inside him. "You should feel safe," he said softly. "And you will, as long as I can help it." The days continued in a gentle rhythm, filled with work and small moments of connection. They would rise early, feed the animals, and work the land together. In the evenings, they shared simple meals, often talking about dreams and memories. Elena told Jake about her childhood back home, the streets she had walked as a child, the small joys she had cherished. Jake shared stories of life on the ranch, the winters he had survived, the storms he had faced. Each story, each laugh, each quiet moment brought them closer. One afternoon, while repairing a section of the fence, a dust cloud appeared on the horizon. It was a vehicle, approaching quickly. Jake's brow furrowed as he recognized Tom Harris behind the wheel. He had assumed that man would never return, but here he was, driving back into their lives. Elena stiffened beside him. He's here," she whispered, fear flashing in her eyes. Jake placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder. "Stay calm. Whatever he wants, we'll handle it together." Tom pulled up and stepped out of the truck, forcing a smile. "Elena," he said, "I came back to see if we can work things out. I made a mistake." Elena stood tall, a newfound strength in her posture. "No," she said firmly. "I made my choice. I will not go back. I am not that woman anymore. I will not let anyone treat me like I have no voice." Jake watched silently, proud of her courage. He could see the resolve in her eyes, the inner strength she had built over the past weeks. Tom's face fell, and without another word, he got back into his truck and drove away, leaving them alone once again. For a moment, Elena felt a mix of fear and relief. She turned to Jake, her eyes glistening. "I couldn't have faced him without you." Jake shook his head gently. "You faced him yourself. I was just here." That evening, after the sun dipped behind the hills, they sat on the porch, watching the sky turn shades of orange and purple. A quiet understanding had passed between them. Elena realized that her feelings for Jake had grown into something deeper than gratitude. She admired his kindness, his patience, and the way he made her feel safe. Jake, in turn, understood that his feelings had shifted too. He didn't just care for Elena. He had come to love her. Over the next few weeks, their bond deepened. They worked side by side in the fields, shared meals, and talked late into the night. Sometimes, their conversations were light-hearted, filled with laughter over small mistakes in chores or funny animal antics. Other times, they were quiet, filled with unspoken understanding and gentle glances that lingered a little longer than necessary. One chilly morning, Jake found Elena in the barn, brushing the horses. He walked up behind her, his hand brushing against hers accidentally. She looked up, their eyes meeting. For a moment, neither spoke. The air was filled with unspoken words, a silent acknowledgement of the feelings they both had tried to ignore. "Elena," Jake said finally, his voice soft. I think I've known for a while that I care about you. More than I should, maybe, but I can't deny it anymore." Elena's breath caught. "Jake, I feel the same. I didn't know if it was right to feel this way, but I do. I can't stop thinking about you." He smiled gently, brushing a loose strand of hair from her face. "Then maybe we don't have to stop. Maybe we can see where this goes. Together." Elena nodded, her heart swelling with a mixture of relief and joy. For the first time in a long time, she felt free to hope, to dream, and to love without fear. As the weeks turned into months, their relationship grew naturally. They shared small adventures on the ranch, rides through the fields, picnics by the river, and quiet evenings under the stars. Every day, they learned more about each other, about patience, kindness, and trust. Elena learned the rhythm of ranch life, and Jake learned the depth of her resilience and the warmth of her heart. One evening, as autumn leaves rustled in the breeze, Jake invited Elena to walk with him along the edge of the property. The setting sun bathed the fields in gold, and the horses grazed quietly in the distance. "Elena," he said, taking her hand gently, "I want you to know. I don't just want you here because I'm helping you. I want you here because I love you. I've come to love you." Elena's eyes filled with tears, a mixture of happiness and disbelief. "I love you too, Jake. I never thought I could feel this way again. But I do. You've given me so much more than safety. You've given me hope, trust, and love." Jake pulled her close, and they stood there, holding each other as the sun disappeared behind the horizon. The wind whispered through the fields, carrying with it the promise of a life built together, one of respect, care, and shared dreams. Life on the ranch continued, but now it was filled with laughter, love, and quiet joy. Elena had found a home, not just in the farmhouse, but in Jake's heart. And Jake, who had always lived a simple life, discovered a love that made every sunrise brighter and every challenge easier to face. Together, they faced the seasons, the work, and the quiet moments of everyday life. Their bond, built on kindness, patience, and mutual respect, grew stronger each day. They had come together through unexpected circumstances, but what grew from it was real, deep, and lasting. Under the vast, open skies of the Midwest, Jake and Elena walked side by side through the fields they both loved. They had faced fear, uncertainty, and the shadows of the past, but together they had found a life filled with warmth, hope, and love. And as the stars began to twinkle above, they knew that whatever challenges came their way, they would face them as partners, as friends, and as a family bound not by circumstance, but by choice and love.